Welcome to True North Hotel's AP training. In this training, I'm going to go over how to create new vendors and enter invoices. To create a new vendor, we first need to obtain a W-9. Once you have obtained the W-9, please make sure that it is filled out completely. If they have selected the LLC in this box 3A, then the C, S, or P must be selected over here on this line. If the W-9 is not filled out in its entirety, then please send it back and obtain a completed W-9. Now you will use the information on this W-9 to make your new vendor. So on here in M3, you would click on the vendor tab and then you would select new. You won't use anything in this vendor number box, you'll just leave that blank. In the company DBA, you will use the name that's on the invoice or on the second line on the W-9. So in this case, the DBA is Golden Waffles, so you would enter that here. The address. Now for the address, it is sometimes different on the W-9 than it is on the invoice. You want to use the remit address that's on the invoice. Now for this vendor, they have listed in box 7 where they want the checks to go. So this is the address that you will use to create the vendor in M3. You will not use this address here that's listed on the W-9. You would use the remit check address. That is not always listed here on line 7. You'll have to look at the invoice and use that. Let's say, for example, for this, you would look at the invoice and the address that they want the check to go to is listed all the way at the bottom on this vendor. So this is the address that you would use. So if it's not on line 7 and you're looking at an invoice and it says remit to or send check to, then that's the address that you want to use to create the vendor on. So we've entered that information here. Now for this vendor, we have selected the GL number that we want to use. So they have always used the complimentary breakfast code as well as the code for utensils and supplies. If they had more that they consistently use, then we could add up to 12. If the vendor uses different codes every time, then it's not necessary to select anything. Now, these codes will always pop up when you select a new invoice in M3, so you won't have to enter those every time. Now, to add a new one, you would click on the ellipse here. So if we were on here, you would click on that box there, and you can either type it in and hit tab, or you can select the ellipse there and you can scroll down to the number that you want to use and select that. Now for the terms for this vendor, their terms are always net 30. So as we can see on the invoice here, it specifically says terms net 30. So that's what the vendor wants the check to be sent. So you would enter terms and you would select this drop box here and you would do invoice plus, and then you would select the drop box here and you enter 30. And once again, this information will auto-populate every time you create a new invoice. Now for the description, this is where you would want to put the customer number or the customer ID, which you will also find on the invoice. So for this vendor, the account number or the account ID is right here. This TOW844 number, that's what we want to make sure that is on every invoice. And as you can see, it auto-populates here because we have entered it on our vendor tab here. Now the account number, this is what shows up on, let's say, Paymering. This will help them to know where we want the payments to go because we do have multiple properties that may use that same vendor, so they'll know which property it's for. This information here will pop up on the check that the vendor sees, so they'll know where the account payment needs to go. Now, this payment method, when we are selecting a new vendor, will automatically select regular. Just leave that as regular. And corporate office will make the selection if it needs to be on Paymerang or ACH. So you can just leave that as regular. Now, once you've filled out this information, then you would click on the Contact tab and fill out any of this information that may have gotten off of the invoice. So if there's a phone number or a fax number or an email, please fill this information in. That makes it easier. If we need to get a hold of the vendor, it's just a quick reference for us to come to the contact and be able to find that information. You won't fill out any of the rest of this information outside of the Social Security number and the tax ID number, which once again is on the W-9. So the EIN number is what we have here. That's what you would put here. And then once you are done, you would click the Save button. And this is the information that we have. So to create an invoice for this particular vendor, we would just click on the Invoice tab, and then you're going to click New. Now, as you can see, the description automatically popped up, the GL codes that we selected automatically popped up, and the terms that we selected automatically generated. So we would just type in the invoice number, the amount, and you would change this invoice date to whatever the invoice date is on the invoice itself. And then for the description, this part does not show up on the check, but this shows up on the general ledger that we in accounting use and that your GMs use for variance calls. And so we need to make sure that this information is filled out in as much detail as possible. So for breakfast, if you have multiple breakfast items, let's say there's 20 different breakfast items listed on the invoice, that's not necessary to fill all of those out. You can just put breakfast food. For utensils and supplies, it doesn't really help us if you just put utensils and supplies in this description. Let's say you're getting forks or you're getting cups. Please put cups or forks. Please just be as thorough and detailed as possible. So as you can see for this invoice here, on the invoice itself, we see waffle flour and we have logo cups. So in the description, they put waffle flour and cup sleeves, which is what was ordered on the invoice. So that just helps us to know what you was actually ordered in a quick reference for us. Now for the accounting period date, as you can see, today is May 5th, so it auto-populates to May 5th. The only time you would change this is once we're in a new accounting period. So let's say today I got an invoice for April 10th. Now, this is going to auto-populate to May 5th, but since the invoice is in April, then we want that invoice to go in April's accounting period. So we want that to put, you would put there the last date of the month. So whatever the last date of that month, in this case, the last date of April is the 30th, then you would put April 30th, and then you would change the invoice. So I said it was April 10th, you would change that to April 10th. And as you can see, our due date populated to that net 30. You can change this accounting period date up until about the 10th of the new month. So I would have about until May 10th to change this if I have any invoice from April. After the 10th, it's best to reach out to your property accountant to see if that accounting period is still open. If it's still open, then you can go ahead and put it in April's accounting period. If they say it's closed, then you want to go ahead and change that back to your current date that you're entering the invoice, but you would leave your invoice date still as April 10th because that's what's on the invoice. Then you would click save and save that invoice. Now, like I said, you have until about the 10th. There may be some leeway there, but please double check with your accounting team. Now, once you fill in a new invoice, this box here will not have the attachment, so you'll have to scan that and upload it in M3. Now, it's different for every property, so however your property uploads their invoices, please make sure that you do that for each invoice. Now, if you have an invoice, let's see. Now, some invoices are horizontal and some are vertical. Please make sure that you are entering them and scanning them so it's easy to read. So this one, it's a it's a horizontal invoice. So please make sure that you are scanning horizontally and not vertically so we don't have to strain our necks trying to see it, okay? Um, Now you can do an image exception if you want to see any invoices that you may have uploaded by mistake that don't have an invoice attached. So in that case, you would go up to the reports and then you go to image exception. Then you would enter, you was entered on date. So if I wanted to check, let's say I entered invoices from the 1st until today, and then you would just do show report. So nothing came up, which means I don't have any invoices that don't have attachments. That's a good way to check, just to make sure that you have them attached on there. Now the single payment vendor we have here, this is what you'll use if you have any guest refunds or if you have any payroll checks that were paid by GM. So on this case, we have a one-time use where this vendor was paid by GM check. You won't really use this vendor often, the single payment vendor. Just double check with accounting anytime you think you may have one. The only time, again, you should be using it is if you have a guest refund or a GM check or occasionally a vendor that you're just paying once and you won't be using them again. That's the only time you would use this vendor. Now for debit cards, please make sure you're entering the invoice. So on this case, they are entering DB and then whatever number they are selecting to use for their debit card numbers. We want to make sure that the entry are consistent. So we don't want to have, let's say, DB with no space and then the rest of the number. You want to do DB space and the number. So once again, you'll just check with your property, however they have been listing them previously. Please just stay in line with what's been done previously. Now, this description here for debit card vendors, you would put the store name in this top description part. This is so we'll know what store, you were using it for, and then you would fill out the rest almost like normal. But for the accounting period date, the invoice date, and the due date, they all need to be the date that the purchase was made. So on this case, the purchase was made on April 27th. So you'll put in 4/27 for all three of these dates. You'll do the same anytime you have a GM check. So once again, for debit cards and GM checks, you want to use the date that either the check was written or the date that the purchase was made and use it as the accounting period date, invoice date, and due date. You'll put the store name up here. In this case, it was Walmart from the receipt. In this top description part, and the DB number is whichever DB number you're using. And then the bottom part you would fill out as normal. So they got office supplies and specifically they got paper for their front desk. Once again, please be specific like they said, this paper was for the front desk. It's not paper for sales. It's not paper that's going in the lobby printers. It's specifically for the front desk. There are different codes for that. Another example would be uniforms. If you're getting uniforms, please let us know. Are they for housekeeping? Are they for front desk? Is it for maintenance? Because they do have different GL codes, and we want to make sure that we are selecting the correct one. I think that's all. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to your accounting team. We are here to help. There's Anytime you need anything, we are here to help. I hope this was helpful. Have a great day.